gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. Now we're going to go over wide receiver rankings and a quick little disclaimer. If you are unaware of what wide receiver 1, 2, and 3, or if I'm talking about flexes, I'm going to clarify that for you. So wide receiver 1s are 1 to 12, wide receiver 2s fall into that 13 to 24 range, and then that wide receiver 3 or flex position is that 25 to 36. Now I do add all the way up to 40 for you guys, and you can play with those last couple of guys if you're really feeling them. I feel okay with you guys flexing them. We're going to go over statistics. We're going to go over production. We're going to talk about how we project that for this week's games in week 4 so that you guys can dominate your lineups in fantasy football. But enough of that. Without further ado, let's get into this week's wide receiver rankings. Claiming the top spot once again is none other than Devonte Adams. He gets Pittsburgh this week. First thing I gotta say is that science never fails. We talked about him not having a score in his first 2 games, and it was science that he was gonna get it in week 3, and he did. We nailed it on that. Now, he did it on the back of a 58% target share against the Niners, and he finished the week as wide receiver 2. Pittsburgh just allowed 3 touchdown passes to Joe Burrow, and Adams is averaging 103 yards receiving. My little Cooper Kupp slides in at number 2, and wow, has it been an astronomical rise to the top for him. He is wide receiver 1 on the year. He has 3 top 10 finishes, 2 finishes in the top 3, and he leads the league in receiving touchdowns with 5 of them. He's seeing 11 targets a game. He's averaging over 120 yards and gets a great matchup. Yes, please, I will take that. Now, our next guy is someone who hasn't quite got it rolling yet, but I am here to put you at ease. Do not lose hope in Staphon Diggs. He's got Houston this week. He comes in as wide receiver 24, but guess what, guys? He is still seeing 10 targets a game. He is going to smash his best finish so far this year of wide receiver 28. I love him enough to project that breakout performance comes. Up next is one of the most insanely efficient and consistent fantasy football wide receivers, and that is none other than Kenan Allen. He comes in here averaging 11 targets. His worst finish of the season thus far is wide receiver 15, guys. So he has been crushing it for you. In this plus matchup for him, he is going for his 3rd 100-yard receiving total in 4 tries. I think he does it, and we love him as our number 4 wideout. Finishing out our top 5 is none other than DK Metcalf. Now he goes on the road to face the 49ers, and he comes in averaging over 70 yards and 8 targets. Now he may just be the wide receiver 17 on the year, so you don't love that, but he was the wide receiver 6 last week after we predicted that he would finally bust out. The 49ers are just a middle of the road defense against wide receivers, and I think he has another big game here. Next up is Tyreek Hill, who goes on the road to Philadelphia. Now he is bumped out of our top 5 due to a couple factors, and that would be a tough matchup against the number 1 passing defense in all of fantasy football, as well as the lack of his consistent production so far. Now he has less than 100 total yards in his last 2 games, so you don't love that. But we know a couple things. Number 1, the Chiefs are 0-2 in their last 2 games. Number 2, Patrick Mahomes needs him, and so I think he looks to Hill early and often in this one, and despite the matchup, this has a feeling of a boom game for Tyreek Hill. Do not overthink this, he's gonna be just fine. Justin Jefferson is in our number 7 spot. Now he gets Cleveland this week. He comes in averaging over 80 yards a game, and he already has a pair of touchdown catches. He has back-to-back finishes inside the top 20, and he's gonna try to make it 3 in a row against a top 7 passing defense. Up next, we have Calvin Ridley, and we'll start with the bad. Calvin Ridley is wide receiver 25 on the year, and we missed his boom game by 1 week, so I am sorry about that. Now let's look at the good. He's averaging almost 10 targets. The Washington football team is allowing over 53 points per game to wideouts. He's the only one of note in Atlanta who's going to catch any balls. We don't know if Russell Gage is back. Zacchaeus, whatever his first name is, not a huge threat. So they are going to be going to Ridley in this one. This is his coming out 2021 party. Hope you're invited. I look for him to go over 100 yards and a score this week against the Falcons. Current wide receiver 9 and the number 9 player on our list is DJ Moore. He goes on the road to face Dallas fresh off of back-to-back finishes as a wide receiver 1. Now he gets an awesome matchup against the 6th worst passing defense in the entire NFL. I think with Run CMC missing some time, it's only going to mean an increase in target share for DJ. He's averaging over 95 yards and over 10 targets. He is going to continue to eat. Rounding out our top 10 is CeeDee Lamb, and for us that was a swing and a miss last week. Now he gets Carolina this week, which is another tough matchup. Even with the bust game last week, Lamb is still averaging over 80 yards a game. I am betting on the talent and a bounce back from him against the Panthers. Now, speaking of bust weeks, in at 11 here is Tyler Lockett. We talked about the matchup with the Niners, which we don't fear, and even though he crushed us last week, we know it's Tyler Lockett, so he's gonna have his peaks and his valleys, and he still comes in averaging 109 yards and a touchdown per game, so he hasn't hurt us that bad. Don't get cute in a tough week coming off of that Minnesota Vikings loss. He is still a back-end wide receiver 1. At 12 and rounding out our wide receiver 1s, making his first appearance here, Mike Williams gets the Las Vegas Raiders. Now guys, I'm gonna go through some amazing stats for you real quick on Mike Williams. He is currently the wide receiver 2. He has 4 touchdown catches on the year. His worst finish of the entire season is wide receiver 14. He's also averaging nearly 100 yards and 10 targets, and he gets a Raiders pass defense who no one is fearing. So I think he has earned his spot inside our wide receiver 1s in week 4. Now it's pretty fitting as we get to 13 that a guy who was a little bit, unfortunate for us last week in Nuke Hopkins is here. Now guys, he was a bit of a decoy last week, and honestly that's kind of all he was. And so I apologize for that miss. I did not realize the extent of that injury, but it seems like he has passed that, and we just have to take a breath and accept that even our studs can let us down sometimes. Some negatives is that he comes in averaging just 6 targets a game, and he also has to potentially face a shadowing Jalen Ramsey. But I would say this, Kyler Murray is no dum-dum. He knows he's got to get his top wideout involved, and I expect him to target Nuke early and often. I am not getting off of the Nuke train just yet. At 14, it's Debo Samuel, and he gets the Seahawks. He is currently the wide receiver 8 and is averaging over 111 yards a game. He is also seeing 10 targets, which you love to see as far as the volume is concerned. Now, he certainly cooled off since his boom performance in week 1, but he should rebound against the Seahawks team that is giving up over 38 points a game to wideouts. We have Terry McLaurin at number 15 coming in this week against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Atlanta is a bottom 12 passing defense, and with Curtis Samuel likely to be back this week, I think it takes a little bit of pressure and shifts defense a little bit more away from Scary Terry. He's averaging 8 targets and 75 yards, and I think the performance this week looks closer to his week 2 performance where he was able to put up 107. Perhaps a little disrespectful to put him here, so I apologize, Adam. I love you. But at 16, we have Mr. Adam Thielen, and he gets the Browns. Now, he's the current wide receiver 4, so that's why I say it's maybe a little bit disrespectful. He's one of Captain Kirk's favorite targets, specifically in the red zone, and he is tied for 2nd in the NFL with 4 touchdown catches. He's averaging 60 yards a game and nearly 9 targets, so there's nothing you're not liking about Adam Thielen. Next up for us is Chris Godwin on the road in Foxborough. Now, he slides in at number 17 because he has been the gold standard of consistency. He's never finished a week lower than wide receiver 25, and I already talked about how I expect a giant day from Tom Brady, and I think that Chris Godwin is a huge part of that. He's the current wide receiver 7. He's averaging 80 yards and a tutty per game. Might as well lump the receivers together. So at 18, we have Mike Evans, and I think that revenge game is going to be kind to him as well. The Patriots are allowing the 4th most points per game to wide receivers, and Evans has wide receiver finishes of wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 16 after he busted for us in week 1. He is averaging almost 70 yards a game and has 2 touchdowns on the year. Just go ahead and ride that wave. Next up is a guy that I wasn't so high on last week, and he made me look silly. At 19, we have Brandon Cooks against Buffalo. Now, he is potentially fantasy's most consistent receiver outside of Cooper Kupp. He is the current wide receiver 6, and he has never finished lower than wide receiver 22. He's averaging over 100 yards a game, and even though this is a really tough matchup where he is most likely going to be shadowed by Tre'Davious White and that number 2 ranked Bills passing defense, I can't put him any lower than this because he has 25 targets in his last 2 games. They are going to give him the ball, and he has shown nothing but production from it. Amari Cooper sees a tough matchup against the Carolina Panthers and is our 20th ranked receiver. Now, he should see more than his combined 9 targets that he's had in the last 2 games. I expect that opportunity to increase. However, he has busted the last 2 weeks after absolutely going off in week 1. So we know there's some bust potential. However, I think he is worth the gamble at number 20. Now, as we get closer to the weekend, if you guys do end up having any start-sit questions, or if you're kind of fumbling between one player or another, please ask those questions down below, and I will get back to you before the games start. Our 21st player is Deontay Johnson, who missed last week with a knee injury. Now, he did have a full participation in practice on Thursday, and he is trending towards playing here against the Packers on the road. He's averaging 11 targets and 70 yards a game, so while we don't love the matchup against the number 6 ranked passing defense, his volume is far too much to pass up. Sneaking in for us here at number 22 is Jacoby Myers. Now, this is all about 2 things, and that is volume and matchup. He saw nearly as many targets last week, which was 14, as he did in his first 2 games combined, which was 15. Now, on top of that, he should probably see at least 10 targets against the worst passing defense in all of football. The Bucs are allowing nearly 60 points per game to wide receivers on the year. Mac Jones trusts him, and he has a solid floor, but also some boom potential. Someone quickly tumbling down our rankings and falling all the way here at number 23 is Allen Robinson. Now, he's averaging 7 targets a game, which isn't bad at all, but he has just 86 yards on the season. 86! And so I can't bring myself to move him any higher than this. You think that the matchup with Detroit is great, but they are giving up the 11th fewest points to fantasy receivers. Now, I think that there's some potential here with Fields, but we saw him last week. And so I need to see it before I'm willing to move him anything more than a low-end wide receiver 2. Our 24th player is someone we really liked last week, and he was able to deliver, and that's Odell Beckham Jr. Now, he gets the Vikings this week on the road, and he's seeing 9 targets, and he was able to catch 5 balls for 77 yards in his first game back from injury, adding a 10-yard rush. I think he's going to continue to see looks because that wide receiver room has no other proven options whatsoever. He also gets a great matchup because the Vikings are bottom 5 in the league against the pass. There's an opportunity here for Odell Beckham as our last wide receiver 2 to have a big day. We head back to our fall from grace theme at number 25 with Robert Woods. He gets Arizona this week, and while I'm not giving up on Bobby Trees, I am still a realist. Woods is the wide receiver 27 on the year, so this is a fair ranking for him, and he hasn't finished inside the top 40 overall in any single week so far. But he's getting over 7 looks a game, and he's averaging just 40 yards with those targets. I think he bounced back. Is it now? I'm not sure. Now, Arizona is a prime opportunity to do it, as they are allowing over 42 points a game to wide receivers. At 26, it's Cole Beasley. He gets those Houston Texans. He has 194 yards so far in the season, and he's averaging 10 targets a game. He was wide receiver 10 last week. So you love to see a little bit of a ceiling on him. He definitely has a solid floor, and he has touchdown potential against Houston. Someone that we have to keep an eye on as we head into the weekend, and rolling in here for us at number 27 is Juju Smith-Schuster. He goes on the road to Lambeau. He was limited on Thursday, so like I said, make sure we keep an eye on it because this also isn't a great matchup. Now the bonuses are that it looks like Chase Claypool is going to miss some time, so he gets an added value for that. He's also already averaging 7.5 targets a game, and he has a touchdown in the 2 full games that he's played. He left last week early with that injury we were referencing. At number 28, it's Corey Davis, and this is all about the matchup. He gets Tennessee. He's averaging just over 45 yards a game, so not great, but he does have a pair of touchdowns. Now, he saw 10 targets last week, and this Titans defense is the 3rd worst against wide receivers, allowing over 50 points per game. Our 30th wideout on our list is none other than Hunter Renfrow. He goes on the road against the Chargers. Now, he's seeing over 7 targets and 68 yards a game, so you love to see that. He is someone I would consider a perfect flex if you're looking for a safe floor, as he has never gone under 57 yards in a game. Now, he doesn't have a ton of upside due to his low average depth of target, but he is going to be a solid option for someone looking for that kind of floor and consistency. At 31, we have Devonta Smith, and he gets the shootout potential matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, he's been outside the top 75 in back-to-back weeks after finishing within the top 25 in week 1. So he's due, maybe. He definitely burned us last week when we bet on the matchup, but he's averaging 7 targets a game, so the opportunity is going to be there. He's certainly a boomer bust option. Are you feeling lucky enough to roll the dice? Talked about fading Colts wide receivers in our trending up and down video late last week, and I am very happy that I did that for this guy, Michael Pittman, at number 32, because he was okay. Now, the matchup with the Dolphins is fine. They're middle of the pack, and it looks like T.Y. Hilton is going to miss at least 1 more week, so we like that as well. Now, his back-to-back games are 12 targets and 12 targets, so you love to see that. He's also averaging those games over 70 yards. He's an okay flex with a little bit of risk. At 33, we have Kenny Golladay, Babytron, hoping to get back on track, and he's going to have every opportunity in a wide receiver room that is riddled with injuries. He gets the New Orleans Saints, who aren't a great matchup. They do allow 40 points a game to wide receivers, and in 2 of the 3 games this season, Golladay has gone for more than 64 yards. At 34, we have Marquis Brown. Now, we did miss on him last week. We did. I'll say that. But I'm not taking the L. And that is because this man can't catch. He had 3 drops last week that would have went for huge gains. 2 of them would have most likely been touchdowns. So if he could have actually caught the ball like wide receivers are supposed to, he would have been great. Instead, he now faces a top 10 Broncos defense against the pass, and that doesn't help. He does have 235 yards receiving through 3 weeks, so that's great, and his upside is obvious. It's just, does he have hands? We have Robbie Anderson sliding in here at number 35 for us, and he sees a Dallas Cowboy defense who is allowing the 6th most points per game to fantasy receivers. Now, he's just wide receiver 42 on the season, but because of that injury to CMC, we know his role is going to increase, and he should see wide receiver 3 type ability in this week. Emmanuel Sanders burst onto the scene in a big way last week after just having 100 yards in his first 2 games. He was able to produce 94 and a pair of touchdowns, and so we love him this week in that Houston Texans matchup. Our next guy up and a potential flex consideration is going to be Tim Patrick against Baltimore. Now, a couple things, disclaimer if you will, we don't love his targets at under 5 a game, and we don't love his matchup in Baltimore. But we do love that he has not finished lower than wide receiver 38 in any single week, and he has 2 touchdowns on the season. Jalen Waddle comes in at 38, and that is due to the volume he saw last week against the Raiders, where he had 13 targets. Now, that matches the amount of catches and opportunities that he had in the first 2 weeks combined. The other thing that is going for him is that Indy is allowing the 7th most points per game to receivers. At number 39, we have Henry Ruggs III, who goes on the road to face the Chargers. He has 191 yards on 14 targets and a touchdown in his last 2 weeks, so we love that production as of late. Now, there is risk here because the Chargers have a top 5 passing defense. Now, I know I said 40, but I did have to take off Chase Claypool, who I initially had on this list, because it looks like he's going to miss time with injury. He is one of my other 3 notable omissions, and that would be Antonio Brown against New England. I just fear him returning from COVID so quickly. We talk about Brandon Ayuk as well. He gets Seattle. He's just not fully back yet, and so I'm not banking on him just yet. And then finally, Darnell Mooney against that 11th ranked Detroit Lions passing defense. Whew. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is Relentless Press.